Hello and welcome to Global Mission of Peace TV, Mystic View. This is number 33. Numerologically, that's a 6, and 6 actually in numerology has a lot to do with family. And our topic tonight will be Bliss Villages. And of course, as always, I welcome my co-host, Shelley. Hello, Shelley.
Hello, everyone.
And if you've listened to her and many of the Mystic View, she is always bringing the oneness and the bliss into things. And I finally got a little bit on the program, and within my words, I think you're going to find a little more reference to bliss because I've kind of gotten it. So welcome all. And Shelley, would you like to start us off, or do you want me to just do my normal go? I would love you to kind of get things rolling here.
Well, speaking of bliss and building the type of community that we could live in that would be conducive to bliss, I think that's a really great place to start. And maybe the premise behind biological architecture. But also, here's the important crux that I'll be coming back to always. We're going to talk about creating bliss in our external environment. But what's absolutely going to be critical is that you also bring the internal bliss for the eternal bliss, the shareable bliss. So take it away. What would you say to introduce Bliss Villages?
Well, it is about sharing. I mean, the whole aspect of how the universe works is through the ability to nest within each other. You know, a good term that Dan Winter uses and has introduced. And so that ability, it works very much like harmonics. I mean, when you hit notes on a piano, especially when you're hitting more than any one note works. It's when you're introducing more than one note, which is what a community is built on, more than one participant. So to be in bliss or in harmony, not every note works with whatever the agreed upon key is. And interestingly, different keys correspond to different energies, but that's really that could be a conversation in maybe one of our, I didn't finish writing it down, the metaphysics thing we were going to do. But anyway, that's, again, getting off topic.
Well, we might come back to that because it does certainly apply.
Yeah, forget the term.
Really, the concept of it's perfect. And the concept of biologic architecture was pioneered by Dan Winter, so I'm really glad that you brought him in right off the top. Here.
Actually, you're right. The full title was Metaphysics of Utility.
Coming soon.
As opposed of metaphysics of let's go down a rabbit hole and find out just how strange it can get. So the whole concept of sharing is about sharing has to do with, first of all, what fits, and if we're looking to be happy, another way of saying bliss, if we're looking to be happy, then we need to be able to share happiness, which would come with sharing abundance, sharing a common goal for what a village is there for. Because, we, as I like to think of, we are the creator, created conditions on the planet, and then handed over creation to us. I mean, if we were to take it from the Old Testament, on the 6th day, the creator rested and didn't show up for work on Monday because that's when our work weeks began. And so if we look at the world and what the world is, the world is the creation on top of the planet, we're going to see a world that is not so shareable unless we're sharing misery. If we're looking for sharing misery, the world is constructed very well. If we're looking to share bliss,
I was going to say on the outside, the external view of things. However, it really comes down that the onus is on you. And if you're creating shareable thoughts and happiness within you, okay, that you're going to see in your immediate environment coming back at you. And so collectively, the more we can join together with this is the vaster expanse of our world that then we influence and touch and receive that kind of information back. Information, the form. And that's probably where we're going to go. So whether we're talking chords, musical scales, that context richness, we're also going to be discussing form. So form of a community, and why form matters. You don't have to take my word for
it. Well, the Bliss Village concept is our way of getting past the meme of Echo Village. I live in Floyd, Virginia, and we have an Echo Village that was not. I went there this weekend, actually played at the Humane Society, and I didn't see a village. Apparently, there's lodging.
Is there anything echo about it? The perfect echo is his conjugation, and that's also Bliss. But
I'm under the impression that echo means their personal economy based on the rates I saw for camping there. It's more like economic village.
Okay, new paradigm villages. Bliss.
And so for me, I'm seeing many of the Echo Village concept is just really kind of like, let's put together something that's kind of cool, but we'll still go to regular jobs because it still costs you the same to live or more to live there for the pleasure of living in what you think is something new. And a lot there is, Shelley, you have a concept called Pantera that actually is different. And that's what...
Yeah, Pantera is very different because it is a complete community whereby the people who live there also work there. The food and the products we utilize came from Pantera. And it's a cooperation that works to achieve the highest good for everyone. And so we've kind of worked out some of the details, which is an essential step if you're going to put it together and offer it to people. And it starts at the hub, which is the education center.
Yes.
And from there, it spans out and touches every area and every walk of life, but from an entirely different concept. It has no basis on the paradigm that we're living today. It has the politics are different, the finance, the education, obviously. The means and way that you live is entirely up to you still. There's absolutely free choice, and creativity is welcomed. But what we do that's different is encourage the beautiful spark of each person to come forward, as opposed to making them fit into the boxes that might have served the past controllers, whatever we want to call them. But let's move on.
Well, actually, no. To me, again, but free choice is not necessarily an anarchic. Again, maybe anarchy might be the wrong word because it just means without rulers. It doesn't mean chaos at all. Mm-hmm. But it's like we're certain agreements. Like, if you have let's take an orchestra. They're all playing. You might have 50 people playing in a key. And let's say you're not reading from music. Let's say that you have really skilled musicians and they're invited to put in whatever they want. Their free choice would mean that they would eliminate notes that don't harmonize in the chosen key structure. Mm-hmm. So they can bring the utmost creativity, but there is an agreed upon general resonance of what that is. And disharmonics would not be something that in other words, the whole idea of free choice by being in agreement about what the result of these choices are.
I like that, and we can come to maybe the Berlin Philharmonic about that, but it also reflects back on what you initially brought forward, is that it's shareable, and that, yes, you were talking about educated musicians, people that already had developed skill, but the bottom line that everybody has is an experience that tells them sharing something was a joyful experience. That led them to something that you cannot buy. And when we're talking about purchasing, money has become such a subtle interface that it's affected every aspect of our thoughts about how we even try to bridge this gap into the new paradigm and begin to imagine what it would be like to live in a village free of that kind of energy. What about the Philharmonic of Berlin?
Well, I want to get back to that, but I just mean, to me, what you're bringing up, I mean, the concept of money is a value placed outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And the only value is people. People, what the system is built up is people dance for money rather than dancing for their own joy, for their own expression. And even if you're going, well, gold is, how about gold? Gold doesn't pop up out of the ground. Gold has to be dug up by it. Who does that? People. Who, if you might want to, melt it and then put it into coins, who's going to do that? Who's going to gather the wood or create the energy to melt it down? People. So at every level, what we need to do to rebalance the equation is realize we, the people, our labor, our creativity is the only value. There is no value besides people. That's how the Creator made the world. Everything was there and given to us, including the gold in the ground if we wanted to dig for it and use it however we wanted to. But it is us. We are the value. We are the fractal representation of the Creator.
And that fractal representation of the Creator is the scale, another scale of exactly what you're speaking about. It's that God spark within you. Because what is your value of taking a certain action or having a certain thought or waking up in the morning? What is your value? And that's what we have to come to terms with. It has nothing to do with commerce.
No, it doesn't. I mean, commerce for me is, like if you have a self-sustaining village, which basically means you have a place to get out of the weather and hopefully sleep comfortably, and you can be fed. You can exist on this planet to experience and create it as it was intended to be. Everything else is extra. So these extras are choices we make about how to live on this planet. So it's time for us as we move forward to start considering the choices that we're making. And so sure, we might have, and now if you're doing anything well, the chances are the nature of reality, the nature of the world we put in is abundance. I mean, almost anybody who grows a backyard garden, whatever they grow has more than they can use unless they want to can and store it. And of course, canning storage for some it obviously is a good idea, but even then, any kind of group effort is going to produce more. So then you might have another area that isn't they're on the wrong side of the mountain, there isn't quite as much sun. But they have other things, maybe there's conifers, and so therefore they're doing wood. And we're still using wood. So then we have ways of trading, but it's not money based. It's human effort, human labor, human creativity based. And all we're doing is swapping abundance.
Sharing.
It's like rather than waste, sharing. And it's just like, gee, we have so much of this. And of course, if they just needed it and had nothing, you would still share it. But the thing is, in equity, it's like, well, the people who are there are going, well, we don't just want to take that. We have this in abundance. We'd like to share that with you. This is really what's at the core of us when we're in touch with our God spark, to share, to want to go, what do you need? I mean, where we're taking care of each other, but you're always making sure, are you taken care of? You have what you need? This is actually the primary space that we come with when we don't have a world that's been configured of scarcity and dancing for dollars, as I'll call it. And It is so to create the new paradigm, to create bliss villages, we have to value ourselves and get in touch with our own bliss. Because the world that we live in is, even though it has a form, it is based in psychology. That form is nothing more than the building out of what's going on inside of us. It is a reflection of what's inside of us. So if we want this outer world to change, we have to change the inner world. And we change the inner world by having the correct values. And that correct value, I believe, starts with we are the value. We are our brother and sister's keeper. And, and do unto others as you would have done unto you. If you would like things, if you like comfortable and like people thinking about you and whether you're okay, then that's exactly the reciprocation.
I think the question you said was, are you okay? That brings me to the story of Parsifal and the Castle of the Grail that we were talking about yesterday, because it brings us to word. How you speak to yourself, but how you're speaking to your neighbor, how you're communicating is having an effect on your own biology. It's having an effect on your community. So this is also one of those subtle little areas that would be absolutely critical and important. And it's been given to us in all the sacred texts as well, even in the mythology. So coming back to Parsifal, the question, it had to be a question of compassion. What ails thee? And that is what brought that, well, it was the spear of destiny, but that's what salvaged it and brought all the pieces back together again, was when you asked that question, because the magic spell was love. It was the sword is word. And what did they say about Jesus, right? The word made flesh, the love of Christ. That is the word. And Christ was also referred to as the sword fish, even, that Dorado, and the gold fish that sometimes the general 99% of the population are sometimes referred to as goldfish. But what does that mean? The goldfish are actually part of nature. They belong to nature, but they've been taken out and put into their individual little fish bowls, as opposed to living in the sovereign seas that they were intended to and designed to be living in. And that's what we're trying to do, is return to our sovereign natural state. That's what this is all about. It's simply remembering who we really are and taking the steps to return to that.
I agree. And I'd like to, first, I want to hold on to word, because again, we're talking about the impact words have on other.
Mm-hmm.
For good or ill, and obviously we really want them for good. But this case of word, because you have word from the Old Bible, from the Old Testament, and words from New Testament, in which case they kind of have different roots. The root in the New Testament, which to me is most applicable to bliss and sharing, is the original word in Greek was logos.
Mm-hmm.
Logos was reason. But what's interesting, if we go into Latin, a very kind of sacred language initially, like Sanskrit, the word is ratio or something like, which means ratio.
Mm-hmm. So
we start having, in the beginning was the reason, or in the beginning was the ratio. Now ratio is proportions. And so in this scale, what makes one note work with another is their wavelength or proportions, or the harmony is achieved through proper proportion. And this proper proportioning allows things to nest within each other. If it's not configured right, you can't nest, you won't have shareable moments, you won't have bliss. So I just kind of like take it, but I don't want to lose the importance of word, to the spoken word. I just want to ride on the importance of the word, because what issues from our mouth. Jesus said it's more, when confronted about dietary laws, the Jewish dietary law says it's more important what comes out of a man's mouth than what goes into it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Although, if we are going to go to food, that is a bliss component too, to eat naturally, to stay away from the GMOs. You know, this does actually destroy your ability to even produce bliss in the long run.
Yes.
And that's what people don't recognize, is the significance of food, of processed food, what that is actually doing to your DNA and your capacity to share charge, which is to say, create bliss. And what that's happening to our children. How many kids have been raised on McDonald's?
Yes.
Without the parents ever knowing the long term, yeah, they think, okay, so it comes down to there's vitamins or minerals maybe. No, it's much more important. It's much greater. And so are the materials that we live in, our houses, whether it's metal or it's natural, the clothing that we wear. All of those elements need to be considered for the actual function of a bliss creating, generating village. Those are all components.
So actually, it's probably a good time just to put up that little picture of a certain kind of village. I want to open it up so when I share screen, I can find it easy. So this is a way of explaining fractality, or how when you construct something big, how it has its complementary fractal parts going in it. So if we look here at we could start at this kind of one, we see the general shape of the village. In many ways, there's a certain almost not hexagonal, pentagon in a very softened kind of thing, because we have an almost flattish bottom with an almost peaked top. And when we add this other piece, you really see kind of like softened angles of a pentagram. A pentagram is an implosion or energy gathering. So, and implosive really is a centripetal as opposed to centrifugal. Centripetal, like a vortex, pulls the outer parts in towards it and creates more energy actually than it needs. That's kind of like a little bit of a clue to 0 point, where you're collecting more than you need. And when you kind of create this, when you collect from the periphery and concentrate it, you actually have a stream coming out of it, and that would be your quote unquote free energy. So the thing is, we can also create free energy by, kind of bioactive free energy, where it feeds our biology. And so what we see here is how, okay, we have this shape, and then each house in the greater, we have this general greater shape, and basically each house, even though they're of different sizes, duplicates the macro shape. So the micro and the macro are shareable, nestable. They mimic each other. They mirror each other. They're fractals of each other. Now, in this case, this had a shaman, and the way they built it, if you look at these little, over here, you'll see like these little shapes of, like you have the shape of the house, and then inside there is a shape of the house, and which is the shape of the village. And this was the interior altar of each house. It's kind of nice to have sacred space in your house.
It's a little bit essential to have sacred space in your body and in your house and in your village. It's a scalar situation. We need it on the planet and in the cosmos. Yeah, and so the shaman, that word actually breaks down to mean the ability to project your aura, your plasma. And that's why this shape works. Any of the natural fractal shapes work.
I'm trying to, I was looking for my.
And the golden ratio optimized fractal phase conjugation, that is just simply a more rigorous term for still point or omega point or 0 point energy. That's actually what we're talking about. And this is what creates that shape, form. It's important.
And so what gets explained here is, so we have the kind of periphery or the outside where all the different houses of the people in the village are formed. You have this big piece here, maybe that's where people commonly dine, or that's where what they call the chief's nuclear family. We're going to get to chief and that kind of thing in a minute. But here is kind of where it's kind of like, let's call it their collective sacred space, their church, their temple. And in it is an altar. Now, this particular sacred space is located in relation to the greater whole, where the altar is in the individuals. So basically, we're having a fractal where the common sacred space has the same relationship to the greater figure as the sacred space inside the house. So, and kind of as Dan says, it's inside the inside of the inside. The sacred altar where ancestors' memory lives. Exactly the fractal way ancestral genetic memory resides in the fractal Holy Communion core of DNA. And so this is where kind of you would commune with the ancestors. And in this case, we're talking about, especially before we moved all over the planet, you had people who had been on contributing to creation for millennia, if not millions of years. And so they have wisdom that you want to stay in touch with. And that wisdom is both the successes and the mistakes. And so what this created was a way for all of the DNA of the families that are represented and captured and kind of have their own vortex in each house to find a common place for that, all the ancestral DNA to accumulate and commune with that wisdom. And so anyway, this is one example. Now there are different kinds of forms that we can use, but this is a super implosive energy building form. Is this kind of rounded pentagonal shape? I'm going to stop share here for now.
Well, that is super. It's superluminal. It's phase conjugate harmonics of the natural biologic origins. That's what allows the survival wisdom of a primary DNA signal to dominate. You know, that's what you were showing earlier. What you were talking about earlier was reminding me of taking a segment out of the DNA. And you know, this is really a powerful reason why we want to return to these type of villages, is because right now, part of the technology is that they can take that DNA out and they can insert a memory. So this is probably in the wrong hands, not a good tool. We want to return to the natural way to propagate and maintain the survival of that DNA, the wisdom of the DNA.
Yes, and the wisdom of that DNA is basically a fractal of the wisdom that created that DNA. So we're coming back to the creator. Without, we want to live in creator consciousness, God consciousness, call it what you will. That is central, because that is where our sovereignty derives from. Even in the United States Constitution, sovereignty of the people derives from God. And so the government is then appointed by the sovereigns to do some work. Okay, they derive their power from the sovereigns, who derive their power from God. And when we start seeing the turnarounds, when you have the divine right of kings who think the power goes to them and then goes to the people. And that is a stealing of the sacred fire. That is somebody coming in and parasitizing the connection. The connection was given to all of us, and then okay, so we have the chief's house. The chief, very often when Westerners come in, because they come in with their divine right of kings and the rest of that baggage that they have, are looked at these people who clearly were speaking and the people deferred to them. What they don't know was that this person was there because the people had seen this person as the best representative. They didn't have authority. They spoke with the authority of the people. They couldn't give orders, but if they wanted something carried out, they could probably make a very persuasive argument based on reason, on the word, based on good logic and ratio of how things work. People said, something, you kind of pull it together for us. That's why you're there. But there wasn't any, like, you will do this because I said it. No, I'm going to present an idea. It's a good idea, huh? Yeah, we're on it. You know, okay. So that's kind of how it worked. Now, obviously, if an illness, that illness of psychopathy happens to get into something, you could end up finding places where you have somebody who thinks that they're above the people. But in all of the healthy villages, whether they were Eskimos, whatever, it was always the kind of the best choice, the person who demonstrated the qualities to be there and basically be the conductor of the orchestra. But the conductor was just the person who was best at coordinating things and allowing other people willingly to be coordinated because they felt comfortable with this guidance. And at every point had input from being in that directed point. And so, okay, we're gonna take our break here because we have had in two of our other Mystic Views, Blue Ridge yurts. And I'm going to break the space so our graphics people and our production people can insert this little Blue Ridge yurt thing again, because we want to promote yurts as one of the ways of fairly easy sacred architecture, and we'll expand upon that a little bit. So, okay, production team, this is where we're breaking. We're going to put in the Blue Ridge yurt part.
Hello there, I'm Radagast, and I'm here in Floyd, Virginia, outside of Blue Ridge Yurts. Let's take a walk inside and see just who's doing this and how they do it. So Kathy, you're one of the proprietors or the proprietor?
I'm partners with my friend Sharon Morley, who makes the wooden frames, and we make the covers here. This is supposed to be our welding room where we make our roofs. This is a hot wedge welder,
okay.
And we put our fabric up here on the track, and then that runs down the track and welds it.
They still make things in America. We've seen the inside of Blue Ridge Yurts. Now we're going to start looking at a couple of the yurts. This is just the basic layout, very well constructed, very strong. All of this is locally sourced. So now we're going to go see what a grand yurt looks like. Looks can be deceiving. This is a 30-foot diameter yurt with 10-foot walls. Regular outdoor living, grills, tables, and a real door. A kitchen. Hardwood floor. A real stove. Couches, TVs, bookshelves, a spiral staircase, a very roomy bathroom, and the guest bedroom. Here we are on the second floor. Basically, I guess a master bedroom. A 5-foot in diameter dome for letting in light. And this is a really spacious bedroom. This is what you can do in a yurt. You can live as if you were in a regular house. Chances are in many places you could put up about 5 of these or maybe even 10 of these for the price of a house. Nice way to start an intentional community.
Okay, we're back with the second part of Mystic View, Bliss Villages. So chances are you're going to have seen something about a yurt. And one of the reasons I'm picking yurt is because a circle is a fairly healthy biological structure. And there are yurt makers, and what we really want to get to is building materials. We need to get away from aluminum, as in trailers, and we need to get away from steel, especially as in girders. These are not conducive to bioenergetic fields. As a matter of fact, they're not only, if they were neutral, it would be one thing, but they're not neutral. So aluminum and steel are really not good building materials as far as biology goes. Stone, wood, and of course, then there's this combination glass is fairly decent also. Not always the best for cold situations, but you know, it is silica based. But there is, to me, this new material that holds great promise because and we're talking about hemp. because not only can it be used for clothing and natural polymers, rope, but it also can be used, especially the heart that isn't used in these other things. They're kind of what you call the pith of it, is really the ideal material to add to lime and create a kind of a cement called hempcrete. Now, one of the downsides of hempcrete, and probably the only downside, is it doesn't have great compressive strength. That is, it doesn't support a lot of weight the way concrete does. So basically what you're using hempcrete is in place of whether it's wood or some other kind of shell. But the average width of, like, think of a cinder block width, has an R value of 25. In most places, walls are considered well insulated with a 25 R value. Usually it's up in the roofs that you go for the higher R values because heat rises, so you want to cap it. But when it comes to the ability, not needing to use fiberglass, another thing you really don't want to have surrounding you, you can use hempcrete. And now normally there's a nice video about building a house in Asheville, and you use regular regular wood 2x4s to create the structure, and then rather than putting aluminum siding and other things, you put hempcrete. Now, plasterboard in many ways, but that's used for many walls, is not a bad biological. It's made of gypsum, and it's coated with paper. So in many ways, that's biologically sound, but it has a poor R value, which usually what happens is you end up creating these walls, and then you have to put fiberglass in the middle to get your R value. So by using hempcrete, you get your R value, and you have something that's biological. Now, the other beauty of these is hempcrete breathes. It tends to balance the humidity levels between inside and outside. And in this breathing, because you're putting lime in there, and lime likes to ultimately become limestone. But lime itself needs a carbonate. And there is a naturally occurring carbonate that many people actually think there should be less of. I disagree with that. But since we have people who believe that, we now have a selling point for hempcrete, is that as the air transits through this breathable hempcrete material, the lime leaches the carbon dioxide. It captures it, okay? It removes it from the air. And little by little, this lime, by stealing these carbon dioxide atoms, turns into calcium carbonate. Hempcrete ultimately will become limestone. And so therefore, not only, if you've ever seen regular concrete, after 50, sometimes after 20 years, it's starting to break down, the elements break it down. With hempcrete, you have something that goes from being resilient to that to something more resilient. Basically, a hempcrete structure can last for thousands of years, just like a stone structure would. So we're getting an R value. We're getting something that's kind to our biology. We're getting something that removes carbon dioxide from the air, which some people think is important. So therefore, we honor that whole process. And we get something that gets more and more enduring with time. And one of our other themes is building what endures. Something that as time affects it positively. So in other words, rather than being entropic, where time tends to break it down, in this case, time builds it up. Perfect negentropy. And one of the reasons I'm using yours is because rather than having to have people who actually know how to build the structure, and very often, even with the Asheville house, they built square structure, okay? So we're ending up living in cubes again, and we want to get away from the right angles in the cubes. So a yurt offers a structure that is biologically nourishing. The yurts can support their own roofs, so that the actual lattice work that you see, there's many, they kind of almost like an accordion, and they kind of roll out, and then you create your circle. And they can support their roof. So now you have the weight support, and all you have to do is put the hempcrete up around it. So you have an R value of what the average house is, something that's going to get harder, and it can support your own roof. And you get away from the average modern yurt covering, which is some kind of very resilient polyester. which is an entropic material. We don't want to work with, no matter how fine, we want to get away from the polyesters. So we're doing a natural material, plus that polyester has an R value of what, 5? Okay, so we are addressing multiple things with the yurt as like a quick structure that can go up, needs the hempcrete, and then you fill it in there, which is why I've been promoting the yurts at the moment. These things come pre-delivered. You can put them up, and then you get your crew to put up the hempcrete, where if you're building a house, you need people to know what they're doing. I mean, you need some skilled labor. This is a way of getting away from the skill required to build a regular house. And then if you're willing to put the sweat equity in and create your own little forms that will hold hempcrete, you have a house that'll last for thousands of years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's my little hempcrete and yurt promotion.
Hey, well, that was a really good hempcrete promotion, and it fits today. And what happens when we can release the technologies that we've had on the shelf for so very many years? Really, it still comes down to biologic architecture, because all life responds well to design that's in accordance with nature. And these new technologies are far more in accordance with nature than what we've been living with in the type of houses and the angles, the harmful materials, sharp corners that bleed capacitive charge. There's technology that we're going to talk about, a new paradigm that would completely move us right past this entire map altogether. But in the meanwhile, let's plant some hemp.
And that's the other thing, is about people getting, currently we have to let the will of the people be known to people, to others. And it isn't just a matter of will. I mean, to me, when you embrace your sovereignty, when you realize that this planet was created for us to be on and become the second creators, that means that every plant that was on this planet was given to us to work with. And so therefore we need to approach our governments with, are we working with the creator, or we are working against the creator? Any prohibition against anything that we were given in the creation process is an affront to the creator, is actually a crime against the creator. So it might be, it's a criminal offense to grow hemp. No, it's a criminal offense to make growing hemp and using hemp an offense. That's the crime. Mm-hmm. And we need to start letting our governments know that we see that they're working against the creator. And if they're comfortable with that, I think there are, especially at the local level, there at the local level of government, there are a lot of people who actually go to church, temple, mosque, whatever. They actually believe that they are in alignment with the creator, and that this justice system is part of, the justice thing. And we kind of inherited that from certain concepts of justice I'd rather not talk about. The fact is, if God gave it to us, it was given to us for creation. And anybody standing between us and creation is a criminal. And we need to let people, especially at this town level, where sometimes the upstanding citizens who are part of the town, when they're churchgoers and whatever, did you ever know that by embracing some of these laws, you're actually standing against God? That's a powerful psychological tool to employ when you're trying to get people to realize, no, I never thought of it that way. Well, maybe it's time we start thinking about it, because we need the resources that were given to us. I mean, even in places where you can't capture rainwater, do you think that wasn't given to us to utilize? Anybody, if rain is falling from the sky as creation was devised, and somebody's saying you can't collect rainwater, do you think they're representing God?
Right. And we're talking sacred architecture. And what is the most sacred architecture but your own physical being? And so the onus, I think, we have to keep coming back to, that hygiene has to be within us first and foremost. If we expect to have an impact on our government and create new blissful constructed villages, we need to take the first step, and that might be a a cleanse, a detox of our own thoughts, of our own outlook, of our own beliefs. That's the sacred architecture.
I'm sitting here, okay, I'm looking for, I'm trying to find the OSCL that Omega Institute in Rhinebeck has, because the reason why is because, again, if we're creating bliss villages, no matter how blissful we are, we're gonna have toilets, and what goes into them and what comes out of them. And so that means creating, to me, a new infrastructure for dealing with that. Boy, it used to be when I went to Omega, I could find the OSCL or whatever it is, like really.
It's not even that new. This is a means of using organic materials, recycled organic materials that's been used forever. And really, we can just employ it in a more organized fashion to serve a greater number of people. And I think that's what you're looking for.
Well, it's also, we want to be food self-sufficient within whatever where we're living, our region supports. Mm-hmm. So when you look at flushing a toilet, and what they were doing at Omega was they were processing it with microbes and plants. And we're able to process thousands of toilets being flushed on a busy weekend and releasing relatively clear water. And with a little less processing, you can actually have what would be called a gray water. And the beauty of gray water is if you really plan it, you have your toilets feeding into a processing plant, and especially with a little elevation, you could then have all of your gray water going into feeder hoses that feed your gardens. So you don't have to use drinking water to feed your gardens. And what's also beautiful about it is that you have gray water is nutrient rich, because where did it come from? Nutrients we ate and passed through us. So this is a way to get the nutrients back in the soil without the septic conditions. And we're actually having this beautiful thing of we turn this water into something that feeds our gardens through a natural and through a gravity fed. I guess I don't know if you've seen the hoses that kind of called bleeder hoses, where you feed the water into the root system. You don't put it on top of the water; you put it right where the roots need it. So that also you get much more conservative or efficient use of water, because you're not dealing with evaporation. At least not the kind of evaporation when you put water on top of the soil while the sun's out. So that's I was trying to look for that, and oh, here we go. We have it's called the OCSL, and let me see if I can just call up if they have anything here. No, unfortunately, I was hoping for they might explain a little bit, but they just say each year the OCSL, and it'd be nice if they told us what the acronym stood for. Offers seasonal education opportunities for students, teachers, activists, contractors, architects, elected officials, and many others. Register for one of our programs or visit the OCSL and learn about regenerative design with a tour of the Echo Machine. Apparently, this is something new. The Echo Machine has a TM after it. But we're going, the Echo Machine.
It's an upstream promoter, I believe. Intron, okay.
The Echo Machine is at the heart of the Omega Center for Sustainable Living and is the latest in nature-influenced technology designed by John Todd, a pioneer in the field of ecological design. An Echo Machine is a water reclamation system that cleans water by mimicking the processes of the natural world. Together, John Todd, Ecological Design, Inc., Biohabits, and whatever, and the Citizens Companies designed an Echo Machine to address Omega's unique need as a seasonal educational retreat center. All the water from Omega's campus, including water used in toilets, showers, and sinks, flows to the Echo Machine, where it's purified by microscopic algae, fungi, bacteria, plants, and snails. This natural water reclamation process cleans the water using 0 chemicals. In large dispersal fields under the parking lot, the purified water is returned to the aquifer deep beneath the campus, because all our water at Omega comes from our wells. So anyway, that'll be kind of like a quick, and then solar energy supplies 100% of the electricity necessary to power the natural water reclamation achieved by the Echo Machine. In addition, Omega's campus is located located on the side of the hill, so gravity aids the water's flow to the Echo Machine, reducing energy demand. So, this is just a beautiful case of intelligent design in building a Bliss village. And that's part of it. I mean, this Bliss village is about us, but villages will have infrastructure. And so many of the eco villages I have seen are little more than hippie getaways almost. And where rich hippies come to kind of bring in the money that's needed, and poor hippies come to provide the labor, if it gets that organized. So you kind of basically bringing in the same stratified kind of sociological arrangement with the stresses and antagonisms that come with it, which is why so many sustainable communities have failed, because there isn't that egalitarian concept when it gets laid out. It's like somebody needs to bring the money, somebody needs to bring the labor. And as we said earlier in the story, the value is not money.
That's why I liked what you had there about the Berlin Philharmonic, because it was about their heart, and as we know, the sound of our own human heart mechanically grades our DNA. So what is the impact collectively when we have an entire village working together in cooperation?
Exactly. And so we're also, again, here we are, we're talking about labor. Labor or skills have to usually start with, you have to learn a skill. And so you kind of have apprentices, and then you kind of have the masters of it. That's how the old guilds work, not unions. Unions are parasitic things that sit there between labor and management, and they kind of just divide the spoils and see how much you're going to get. A guild is an autonomous representation of a certain skill set, with the people who know the skill, can impart it to those who show a certain aptitude for that skill, and qualify these people. These aren't colleges. They're, you actually have to demonstrate a real skill, not necessarily pass a written test per se, but you actually, as an apprentice, you bring your labor that pays for your education. Basically, you justify being educated because you're helping with what the guild does. So we find out that the Berlin Philharmonic is very much like one of these old guilds was, and I'm going to share that with us. It says, when the Berlin Philharmonic was created in 1882, its 52 musicians decided to do business differently. They wanted a democratic system that not only involved the musicians, but empowered them as well. It is the musicians who manage themselves, from scheduling concerts to making tour arrangements or handling delicate personal matters. So they do their own human resources, so to speak, or people and culture. All right, the audition process is totally inclusive. Every member of the orchestra takes part, forming an audience for the auditioning candidates on the stage of the Philharmonie. That's the concert hall, the orchestra hall. There are 128 votes, and the chief conductor, like everyone else, has just one. The audition tests stylistic understanding and qualities of sound and expression. Technique is a given, but never used as the main criterion. I was told by one player that he and his colleagues were looking to have their souls touched by the music making. Bliss. Base salary is €90,000 gross for all rank and file players. Principals receive 15% extra. There is no individual negotiation of personal contracts as in the USA. Transparency and equity are seen as essential to solidarity. Besides playing in the orchestra, every musician is expected to be a soloist, perform chamber music, and contribute to the overall vision of the orchestra. Berliners take a broad view of their responsibility as musicians. Besides the established concert series in the Philharmonie, the musicians are involved in community work that is remarkable for its depth, for the depth of its engagement and interactivity. The musicians' work touches many, from kindergartners to prisoners, from teachers to lifelong learners. There is no contractual obligation for the musicians to do this work. They are paid no additional fees, just travel expenses. They do it because they understand the inherent transformative power of the music and want to share that with audience who have not previously experienced it. Their model is not the vision of any one leader. It comes from a collective of musicians who are empowered to be creative with new ideas, new directions, and new challenges.
Self-aware, perhaps. You know, the nature of what makes a wave sustainable is actually what the term sacred comes from, is that sustainability. And so we're talking about sacred architecture and our sacred God spark, and how to return to that. It is the sustainability. It's what makes a wave sustainable. Sharing.
Yes. And we are sharing this because we are part of Global Mission of Peace. And the main thing of Global Mission of Peace is humanitarian outreach. And humanitarian isn't about charity. It's about living together like humans with the God spark in creation the way it was meant to be. That's what humanitarian really is. Now, initially, of course, there's some outreach to those who are not doing well, but charity isn't it. We want to share our world together. We want to partner with each other in what we're doing. And so this Bliss Village concept is something that we're probably going to keep on covering for a while, because the infrastructure that we're trying to lay isn't just about the ideas of what a yurt or the shape house or even a processing unit. The main terrain that we need to cultivate is our psyche. Our psychological terrain is where the primary destruction has taken place. It is where the most remedial action has to be taken in how we see ourselves in relation to the world so that we can create a new paradigm. Now, with the new paradigm, I mean, I was talking with one of our members, Sanjay, and one night I just said, I want to be involved in new paradigm production. And he goes, there's the name of your quote unquote company. So I'm just kind of making almost like a public trademark. New paradigm production is what I'm engaging in. It's what I'm trying to do. It's not with an S either. It's not New Paradigm Productions. This isn't a production company. This is about producing in the world a new paradigm. And it's done through ideas. It's done through sharing. And so I'm just kind of put it out there like, this is my own little intellectual property. No lawyers are involved. No lawyers will ever be involved. Lawyers are something I'd like to see
Given a new job,
given
a new meaning,
given new purpose. That's correct.
a new way to express their brilliance. But
Yes.
really, what we're talking is harmony, and harmony, notes that we covered, sound, chord, community. And so we could be like the phoenix. And the reason I'm saying the phoenix rising from the flames of the old is because it derives from Pahanik, which means the house of Enoch. And the keys of Enoch are sound keys. So it all ties so nicely together that it's harmony. It's a collective harmony.
So I think we're going to conclude our program for today. Please, we're looking to kind of make this a series, but try to go out for new ideas, find some of these new technologies, where you can go for resources. I just Google hempcrete. Look at there's a building in Asheville, North Carolina that they were showing actually kind of how you mix it, how you create forms. As a matter of fact, concrete, when you pour concrete, it's poured into forms. In this case, you kind of do the forms and you mix up batches and you stick it in there and you pound it down, and then you can remove it and it's allowed to dry. It has a certain amount of standing quality. It's not like cement where it's just sloppy. There's a little curing period, but it's not quite the same. And we're going to just be bringing you resources. Be involved. Do not just expect us to kind of like plant seeds. But then, please tend the gardens of your own growth and your own finding of bliss through the ability to share with each other, and the concept of sharing, the concept of looking, are you okay? you know, because as you're looking, I mean, make sure you're okay too. But the thing is, while you're checking somebody, you might think you're okay, and somebody else looks at you and go, I'm not sure. Can I, you know, maybe you could have a little help there, because certain people can be very heroic and almost give up too much of themselves to help others. And we don't want it. This needs to be a good balance. So by us all checking in with each other, we'll make sure nobody's giving more than they need to.
And we'll support each other's bliss.
Correct. So in Bliss,
I like it.
we would like to say goodbye. God bless you all. Creator inspire you all. Please listen to your heart where bliss is most coherent, and then follow that bliss. And in this case, that bliss is shareable living, shareable ideas, shareable love.
See you soon.
Thank you.